I get it. Starting your build off can be daunting, and in truth, even just buying one mod can also be a hard decision, but it is a start. Whether it's horsepower, cosmetic, or handling you're looking for, here are 8 car mods for around $100. A short throw shifter for around $75 to $150. While adding one of these won't make your car go warp speed, it sure as hell will make your car feel like you are. Short throw shifters reduce arm movement, provide a more engaged and direct feeling with the transmission as you row through each gear. This closeness also makes you shift slightly faster as well, so it could improve your speed in that sense. However, the main advantage is more so just the tactile feel, because it gives nice engagement, comfort, and most importantly, control, especially for more precise shifts. If your car ever someday becomes a land rocket with 1,000 horsepower or a drift missile swinging its booty through turns, it's nice to have a short throw shifter to row each gear in a very nice, predictable manner. Lights. If you have an older car, upgrading to a set of LEDs will do wonders on night drives and winter storms. It can genuinely keep you safer. As for xenons, there is still a debate as to whether or not you just see better or just see bluer. But if we're talking about LEDs versus halogen, then yes, for sure, the LED outshines it, especially in terms of high beams. As for cosmetic boy racer lights, you'll find plenty of kits under $100. Be it underglow, engine bay lighting, angry grille lighting, or whatever you want. I don't really care much for cosmetic only lighting kits, but I am aware that a lot of beginner enthusiasts do this as their first mod for how cheap they are. It's pretty cool still that this encourages beginner enthusiasts to play with their own car and take some things apart. I'm serious when I say that. Anything that gives you the curiosity and courage to wrench on your own ride is a step in the right direction. And honestly, the first mod that you put on is the hardest mod that you put on, as you're constantly checking the internet tutorial over and over and over, glancing at each step to make sure you've done the exact thing. But that just helps break down a barrier that a lot of people set up, especially if someone's scared of performance mod. It might be easier to just tell them to do a cosmetic lighting mod and boom, what do you know it, later down the road they're willing to open up to more types of wrenching. So in that sense, if this is your first mod, light it up, baby. Ported throttle bodies, $80 to $300. Yeah, we're talking about this again. If you haven't watched my previous video, you should definitely check it out after this one. In that video, I finally sort out the differences between a ported throttle body and a throttle body spacer, because yeah, they sound really similar. Go watch that video for more clarification, but here on this video, we will be talking about the ported throttle body, because in that video, we already discussed that this between the two is the real performance mod. The concept of porting is done to increase airflow, either by increasing volume, speed, pressure, or the pathway that the air takes. This makes it a real performance mod, as it can yield measurable gains on the dyno. Albeit in the case of porting a throttle body, it's quite small, just 3 horsepower in most naturally aspirated small engines. But hey, power is still power. It does scale better with each additional mod that it's paired with, so if you pair it with a cold air intake and a tune, you might see 5 to 7 horsepower. By the time you add intake manifolds, you might see 8 to 10 horsepower, and by the time you add forced induction, you could even bring it up to 15 to 21 horsepower. And for a mod that you spent $100 on as your first mod ever, that you bought so long ago, for it to eventually down the road give you 21 horsepower if you someday do go for an endgame boosted build, that's actually a steal. Now before moving on, I want to briefly answer some comments I got from last video regarding ported throttle bodies versus throttle body spacers. For those asking how a throttle body spacer's increased throttle response would still benefit drag racing since reaction times matter there, first off, I sorely forgot to mention this. A ported throttle body also increases your throttle response. I did make a note of it in the previous video, but I forgot to say it aloud so some people didn't know that was the thing. So the TBS has no advantage over the ported throttle body. Let me repeat that. It has no advantage over a ported throttle body, so just buy the ported throttle body. Because a ported throttle body does everything a TBS does and more. Remember, the TBS did not come first, the ported throttle body did. A TBS exists as a marketing gimmick. Where there are good, actual functioning products, there will always be snaky companies that try to market something similar to try to trick the same consumer base into buying their product. They like to make them shiny, pretty, fancy colors, and you just have to resist that urge. When in doubt, if you really want something to look nice in regards to your ported throttle body, you can always just powder coat it. Lowering springs. I've spoken highly of these in a lot of videos on my channel, but in my previous video, a lot of people mistook my comparison of coilovers against springs as me hating springs. I do not hate lowering springs, but if you were to unironically ask me which one I think is better, obviously I'm going to say coilovers, unapologetically in fact. Having said that, that doesn't mean springs are a bad mod per se. Springs are still a cheap and safe way to lower your car. I would still rather you buy lowering springs than cut your springs. The main advantage of lowering springs is they result in better aerodynamics, better cornering stability, and obviously looking cooler. Make sure you buy progressive springs, that way they actually can maintain a pretty similar ride from a comfort standpoint to your stock setup. My only word of advice is that you should really only do lowering springs on a relatively new car or a car that has lower mileage. If you do it on a car that's nearing 100,000 miles, you may blow your shocks because lowering springs, they add more stress to your shocks. That is why I recommended coilovers last video, because coilovers replace your stock struts and shocks. So if your Sona is a higher mileage car, you can kill two birds with one stone. If you do choose to just buy new stock struts or aftermarket struts, or just go through a junkyard and find a similar model of car, because again, it doesn't necessarily cost $500. I was just using my Mustang as an example. If you can find stock struts and shocks for free in a junkyard or for just 50 to 100 bucks, it might still be economically feasible to just get new stock struts and then just put lowering springs on anyways. And if that's what you choose to do to save money, I won't stop you at all. Because for just a couple $100, you get a nice looking car. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far and love automotive content, then I'd love to have you subscribe since you're already coming back anyways. It's free to hit the button, and I upload weekly long form content with some shorts mixed in between. Alright, back to the video. Brake pads. If you can't afford super expensive big brake kits for several thousands, fret not, as you can make an immediately noticeable difference by just swapping over to performance brake pads. Keep in mind some of these pads may squeak a bit more than usual or during certain weather conditions. Most of them will squeak during their braking period, but they'll stop shortly after 1,000 miles or so, or they'll just return to a less squeaking state. If you don't care about the slight noise or embarrassment that might cause you at stoplights, then that's a nice thing to do to your car. Just get some performance brake pads. You'll have a lot more stopping power when driving through mountains, twisties, or just doing simple autocross. However, notice that I'm not mentioning track, because for track racing you do need a specific set of track brake pads, not performance brake pads or street performance or whatever. And this I actually would not recommend because it is more expensive, so it's out of budget for this video, but more importantly, I would not recommend using track pads on a street car, and most manufacturers of those track pads also do not recommend it either. Read the manufacturer's recommendation when buying new brake pads. I would highly recommend just performance street options for more aggressive, spirited street driving, or autocross compounds instead, but track compounds usually are considered track only use for a reason. Canned tune. Alright, so this one does kind of push the budget boundaries of this video, but it's great mod and I will never ever shut up about it because I think beginners need to know about this so they don't go around town running too rich or too lean and blowing up their engine after a few 10,000 miles. In regards to the comments that you guys are leaving behind, I will acknowledge the fact that you guys are absolutely correct. Email tuning especially should not be looked down upon these days because it's actually gotten so advanced and so accurate that you can just have them run, so they have the same make, model, and year of car on their dyno, but you can give your car's parameters to them so then they can run their version of the car in that dyno and basically make a super accurate email tune that they send back to you. Like, again, I feel like dyno tuning your literal car and putting it on the dyno will still be the most accurate, but we're getting pretty close for something that is extremely not just budget, but very easy to use, because again, this can be done within minutes online of just a quick talk back and forth instead of scheduling appointments months out, physically making time in your schedule to bring the vehicle there and then standing there and watching it and communicating with them as they down your car and blah blah blah. So technology has really just made this come a long way. Highly recommend this as a very good thing to familiarize yourself with. A lot of people are scared to do it as a first mod because they say, I'm gonna get mods later on that will need a different tune anyways. Don't worry, email tuners offer free revisions usually, like lifetime revisions. So you might as well do this as one of your first mods if you're willing to. It's just a good thing to learn. Even on a stock car, it can still give 10 to 15 horsepower. Sure, people laugh and say that that's not much, but remember, it scales harder for each additional mod you add, and more importantly, you kind of need to do it with any additional mod. Basically, this is mandatory is what I'm saying. This is literally a mandatory mod for anyone who does performance mods, so you may as well get it done earlier, and it's not a bad decision too. Synthetic oil. So this is probably the biggest stretch of this video, but if you have a car that doesn't already have synthetic oil, then I guess this technically counts as a mod because it didn't come with your car from factory and it's not OEM spec. But a lot of grocery getters, especially older ones, are usually still using cheaper quality oil from factory, and their manufacturer recommendation is still cheaper. cheaper quality oil. If you give them synthetic oil, they tend to have much better reliability, and they actually just tend to have a little bit better performance. You know, I'm not going to say they're going to go flying off the line, you're going to notice it. The main reason you want to do this is just kind of just make your reliability better, but also make your convenience better, because it's kind of annoying to change oil every 3,000 miles of regular oil. It's just nice to have intervals of 5,000, 7,500, even 7,000, depending on car. Please don't do 10,000 on like a performance turbo car, but you get the point, right? And for people who don't want to constantly sit at dealerships waiting to get their car back, or in my case, for people who don't want to constantly change their own oil, it's nice to have your oil have longer intervals. The final mod of this video, it is going to be, yes, I'm gonna pull this on you guys, a driver mod. This can range from free to $20 to $200, because no amount of thousands of dollars you throw at your car will ever fix a bad driver who can't make any use of that car. SCCA offers driving courses starting at $20 for members, or realistically for you guys watching, $30 since you guys are non-members. Having the freedom to drive your car like a moronic hooligan in a safe, controlled environment will help you learn its limits. Some of their weekend courses can range upwards of $100 to $200, and you can also rent cars and pay even more, but realistically speaking, you should be using your own car, so bring your own car, because it's important that you learn your car, since that's the one you're going to be streeting and spending the most time with anyways. Knowing your car isn't just important for driving fast or cornering fast. It's important to prepare yourself in emergency situations that can actually make you a safer driver. I've seen countless compilations of lifelong Camry drivers retiring, buying their first Corvette, experiencing just a little bit of wheel spin, panicking, overcorrecting, and then sending their 100 grand land missile straight into a curb. In order to truly enjoy your vehicle, you do have to remember that it likely outperforms your limits. So you need to close that gap between your performance and its theoretical limit. However, in truth, especially in terms of really fast cars like 600, 700 horsepower cars, they will always exceed our limits. There's a reason professional race cars are still around that range. By the time you're talking about several thousand horsepower cars, those are mostly just straight line vehicles. Never ever underestimate or take for granted just how powerful cars actually are. Be safe, never underestimate your vehicle, and always try to improve yourself as a driver. Anyways, if you love automotive content, then make sure to subscribe and like this video. It really helps me a lot in the algorithm. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and make sure to check out some of these other videos that I've made. See y'all next time. Blade Angel out.